What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Phaithful Phanatics show here on DSM-Media's Philadelphia YouTube channel. Guys, if you're new to the channel, make sure to smash that subscribe button, turn on notifications for whenever we go live, whenever we post a video here on the channel. It is the best spot to get interactive with your host. I'm one half of them this morning, Dylan Davis. To my right, my faithful co-host, Scotty. And on this football Friday, heading into week 1 of the Eagles season, we will be giving away our final Eagles record predictions, our X factors on offense, our X factors on defense, player projections, everything to get ready for this season. It's going to be a lot of fun, man. Season kicked off last night. Lions take down the Chiefs in a 1-point thriller. I don't know if we want to call it a thriller, but it was an interesting game, close down to the wire, right, to kick off the NFL season. Hoping for a little bit more cushion, comfortability when it comes to the Eagles taking on the Patriots this weekend. But how are you feeling as we head into week 1?
No, I'm feeling great, man. I told you before the show how great last night was. Just the energy. I mean, football being back, you just feel the energy flowing through your body. And I literally was talking to my fiance last night, and I was telling her, it almost feels like I was depressed during the summer, man, and like subconsciously, like I wasn't like in my bed, like laying down under the covers and stuff, but like just like looking for entertainment, right? You have baseball, but baseball, those games are so long. They're every
a marathon, man.
They're just on your TV. You know what I mean? Yep. It's not like you have to focus in on baseball like a football game that's once a week. So like, I don't know, man. I was looking for like sources of entertainment all summer. And when the sun's out, it makes you feel like you have to get outside and do stuff and like go to the beach. If I don't go,
I just want to be a homebody in the fall. And
exactly, I'm feeling less of myself if I don't get out to the beach that weekend. So like, just all of that stuff is gone. Sports are back, and I can relax in the comfort of my home and still have that source of entertainment, man.
100%.
So it's a nice feeling. That game though. That game, though, last night, I just wanted to say, a little bit of a nail biter, but it's one of those like games at the beginning of the season. You saw it with the Bucks and the Cowboys.
Getting the rust out, man.
Yeah, getting all that rust out. But what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, don't get it twisted. Like we have the Phillies right now making that September push. We want another Red October, but it is a marathon. I mean, this season started all the way back in April, right? And when baseball's just on almost every day, it kind of becomes white noise some nights, especially when our team is the Phillies, when they have the Royals in town or like the Nationals in town, right? It's not the same. It doesn't carry the juice. Now, when they play the Braves, you're going to be more inclined to sit up on your couch and be locked into
Mets come to town
precursor. When they're playing the Royals on a Tuesday, you're kind of just sitting back.
Good. It's like what we preach on here every morning, like after a Phillies loss in the regular season. It's like, dude, it's 1 of 162. So I'm not gonna be sitting there on my TV like, get this win.
Compared to football, when it's just magnified, and those games matter so much more week to week, right? But
shout out to the Phils, man. Shout out to the Phils. No,
absolutely. It feels weird not talking about them on this Friday morning. They kick off another homestand. They're pushing to seal up that first wild card spot as this month drags along. But no, today is strictly Eagles. So let's get into it, man.
Sir.
Back when the schedule dropped, before the 53-man roster was out, before training camp, before it all, before we knew what this roster was really going to look like, you and I sat down and kind of gave our initial reaction, our initial prediction to what this Eagles team is going to do in 2023, 2024. Well, now it's time to now that we know everything's set in stone heading into the year, it's time to give our final record predictions. Now, I'll throw it to you. I have 2 numbers. I am stuck by 1 game which way I sway, but the bottom line is I have a basement for this team this year, and it's high. The basement is above a lot of team ceilings, and that's how high I am on this Eagles team this year. But I'll throw it to you first, man. We don't have to go through every game. We can, after we give our record predictions, we can kind of pinpoint some of the tougher games and how we feel on them. But what is your final record prediction for the Birds this season?
Man, this was a tough one. Obviously, you go through these games and just the way the games are kind of divvied out to the Eagles, the structure of it. you know that losses have to come in at some point, right? Like
Yeah,
you have to
and it never
lose.
plays out the way you think it's going to play out, right?
Exactly,
Except for
exactly.
last year.
We've talked about, the Cowboys matchups, and it's like we would like to see the Eagles win both of those this year just to
But
kind of change
realistically,
the dynamic. But you have that one Cowboys game. Well, both of them are actually mixed in that run of just contenders, right?
right.
So it's like to win both of those, it seems like it's going to
Yeah.
be really hard task unless they drop one to another team. I don't know. We'll see how it ultimately plays out. But my official record prediction would be roughly 13-4, 12-5, right around that area in the 17 game series season. I would say I don't even want to say 11 wins is my basement, man,
Yeah.
because I think that they're going to get to that 12 win mark. I would say 12 wins is probably my basement, but 13 is where my head's at. Like 13, 4 losses, that seems fine. Like that's they're human, right? Like that's fine, but like 13 wins seems like what I need to be as confident as I am right now at that point in the season, right? Going into the playoffs, the seeding in the playoffs, that's where I have to be if
Yeah.
they're as good as I think they are right now.
So you and I do not share our thoughts before we come on here and record or go live. It is exactly what I have. I am on a seesaw between 12-5 and 13-4. My
yeah,
initial reaction when I went through, and even if I change around which way they kind of go with, let's just say Seattle versus the Buffalo game, if I think they win one or lose that,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
Even if I reverse that, I still keep coming back to 13-4. But 12-5 is kind of the basement I have set for this team. And maybe that's a little unrealistic with the schedule, but that just shows how good this Eagles team is
yeah,
and the law and the expectations that we have for them. I think your point. So I will say my official record prediction is 13-4, but my
yeah,
basement is 12-5. If they're a game off, I still think 12-5 might be good enough to win the 1 seed. San Fran's going to have a
yeah,
tough schedule as well. Dallas has a tough schedule, so
yeah,
it'll be interesting. But the layout of this schedule is kind of what throws me off when making these picks, man,
yeah,
because we started what 8-0 last year or 9-0 when we lost that Monday night game to Washington. I
yeah,
believe we were 8-0. So you go through this and you're like, oh, well, win. They're not losing to Minnesota in the home opener, win. They're not losing to Baker, win. Oh, home against the Commanders, win. Oh, the bad Rams, win. So you get to 5-0. At least for me, I get to
yeah,
5-0.
yeah.
And it's like, are they going to start the year 5-0 after
5-0.
going
Like
8-0
no,
last year?
like no mishaps in those first 5 games,
Right.
right?
But
Like,
they should win these 5 games. They are going to be heavy favorites in a majority of them. I know they're only 4.5 point favorites against the Patriots. They're on the road against a really good defense. It's Tom Brady's, homecoming
yeah,
thing before the game. It's going to be a lot of emotion in Foxborough. But outside of that, your home opener against Minnesota, we saw how that movie played out last year. I don't expect them to lose that. They're
yeah,
not losing to Tampa Bay or the Rams on the road. It's just not happening.
yeah,
And I don't foresee them losing their second home game to Washington and Sam Howell, right?
yeah,
But so if I pick them to go 5-0, which I have, then when the losses start to pile up and I'm kind of picking out these losses, it's like I start to beg the question then, well, man, we start losing to all the real contenders. You know what I mean? Like it's
right,
making me
right,
take a step back and be like,
right.
if this is how it plays out,
Then we'll
there's
look like
going to be
frauds.
conversation, whether we
Yeah,
believe it or not, about they beat up on the easy part of the schedule, but here they are losing to the more talented teams of their
yeah.
schedule. And that rubs me the wrong way because I don't view it that way. I just can't pick them to go 17-0. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
And that's the
So
thing when you go game by game, it's like, okay, well, the Eagles can beat this team. Like you'll have games where the Eagles should beat
right.
these teams, and then you'll have the games where okay, the Eagles have a good chance at winning these games
Yes.
against these contenders. So it's like when it comes to the contenders, and it depends what line you draw in the sand as far as who you think are real contenders. Like Seattle,
Yeah.
for example, is that a real contender in your eyes? Like, so then do you
Right.
group them with like the Cowboys, 49ers,
I think
Chiefs,
I would.
Bills?
I think I would. We had
And
them in our
so
playoff in
then
the
and the
playoffs.
Jets and the
Yeah.
Dolphins, I would group them in that
Correct.
group as well. And so then when you group those guys, can they just go even in
Right.
those 6 or 7
7.
games,
Right.
right?
And
can
then
they
go
just go
3-3.
even and then win the rest of
Right.
their,
Right.
the
Then
rest
you have
of
the
their games that
Cardinals
they
at the
should
end.
win?
You have the Giants twice. You get into that
Right.
part. Let's see here, right? So are we in
Yeah, we were
agreement that we
4 and
both
2
have
in
the
the division
Eagles?
last year.
Yeah. And it's
4
going
and
to be
2
tough
in the
because the
division.
Giants are more improved. The Cowboys,
Yeah.
we know how that story plays out. But let me ask you. So we're both in agreement that we have this team starting 5-0 on paper. I have their first loss coming in New York to the Jets. Now,
Yeah.
if you've watched our Super Bowl picks, you would know I have the Eagles over the Jets getting their revenge for that regular season loss in Sin City in February. So I
Yeah.
have my first loss coming there, right? And here's just the way I kind of look at things. Sunday night, home, Kelly Green's back. I don't see them losing to the Dolphins. The Dolphins are a really good team. Top 10, borderline top 10 defense, right? Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, I get it. But it's just going to be not an emotional night, but it's going to be a wild night at the Link. And the
Yeah.
Eagles, to me, aren't losing that game, right?
Yeah. Tua versus
You get the Giants on Christmas Day. They're not losing that game. The Niners at home, after all this chatter, Hassan Reddick's got it circled. They're not losing that game. Those are the ones I pinpoint where, like, against the tough teams, they're winning these games.
Yeah.
Then you have left Kansas City on the road, Buffalo at home, Seattle on the road, and the Dallas games. And that's where I start to pinpoint my 4 losses or so.
So the thing with the Chiefs, man, the only thing I'm thinking there, one, there's going to be a lot of motivation for the Eagles to go out there and beat them.
Agreed.
But I do wonder at that point in the season, if the season goes as we're predicting here, what the Eagles would be, 5-0,
I had the
5-1,
Eagles, I believe,
6-1,
8-1 at that
7-1,
point.
and then you have them. Yeah, they would play the Cowboys at home before
I
they
had them
play the
winning the
Chiefs.
home game, losing
So
the
they would
road
win
game.
that home. If we're gonna have them split, if that's the
Right.
case, then they would win the home matchup. So 8-1 at that point. What are the Chiefs going to be at that point? Right? They might have. I believe they would have a few more losses than that, given the start of their schedule in the season. Given that they've lost to the Lions already, like
Right.
that's kind of what I'm going off there. So maybe the Chiefs need that game a little bit more at home at that time in the season, right? But I don't know. That game is kind of a wild card to me, man. I think, obviously the Chiefs are at
100%.
home. They should be the favorites, I would say. But as we know, the Eagles have more than enough motivation to go down there and win that game. Bills at home, man. That one's another one where
Yeah.
we're at home. It's, Thanksgiving weekend. Like, there's a lot of drama built there. That's what I mean, though. This schedule is tough. So let me go back to the beginning, because you said 5-0 with those first 5 games.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to pick one of those teams that they would lose to potentially, who would it be?
It would be week 1, man.
On the road against the Patriots.
I'll tell you this. They're not losing the home opener against the Vikings.
Yeah.
The Rams, we have discussed them. I think they're a bottom 3 team in the league. They're not losing that game against that defense. They're not losing to Baker. I mean, I just don't foresee that happening. I know the Bucs defense is still somewhat intact. They're at home against Sam Howell. I don't know. I think if there is an upset in the first 5 games on this Eagles,
if we're losing to Sam Howell at home, there's a problem. You know what I mean? Like that shouldn't.
Well, then again, we did lose to Taylor Heineke at home last year.
Fair enough, yeah.
And it was whatever. But I would say it would be week 1 in Foxborough against that defense. Bills had all offseason to prepare for this. So I don't think they lose that game. Like I said, I had them going 5-0. That would be the one. Let me ask you this, though. Do you, like I said, when you're kind of going through this schedule and you have to pick losses somewhere and you kind of start them off 5-0 against the easy part, but then you kind of get annoyed with the fact that you almost have them going like 2-3 versus the tougher schedule. And what does that say about the team? Would you almost rather them lose to Sam Howell at home in week 4, but beat Buffalo at home in November? Because on one end, that's a really bad loss.
Yeah.
But on the other end, that's a great win over a true Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, like if I had to pick one or the other.
Yeah.
Right. I would probably take the win against the credentialed team. So I broke it down. So 5-0 in the first 5 games. Then the next 5 games, you have Jets, Dolphins, Commanders, Cowboys, Chiefs. We can agree. I mean, they're on the road against the Jets. We can agree there.
Yeah,
Boom,
I
they
have that
lose
as a
that
loss.
game against the Jets because they're going to be due for a loss at that point as well.
Yeah.
They're going to be going against a tough defense.
And Rodgers is always good against our defense. So, I mean, I know it's a
Yeah.
new coordinator, new pieces, but Rodgers always has success against us.
So 5-1. Dolphins, I agree, at
I
home.
think it's a win. Kelly
Boom.
Green debut
So 6-1. Commanders in
win.
DC.
I think they sweep Washington again.
Still taking 7-1 there. Cowboys at home. That's probably a toss up, but 8-1.
Right.
And then Chiefs. Let's just say they lose that game against the Chiefs on the road,
Mhm.
8-2. Then the next sector of 5, we have Bills, Niners, Cowboys, Seahawks, Giants.
So I had them losing to the Cowboys on the road. That's one. Where I've been twisted is I either had them winning at home against Buffalo and losing in Seattle as a tough road game, or beating Seattle and losing at home to Buffalo.
So the thing for me, it's hard for me to imagine, but I guess either way they would be losing 2 in a row in that
Right, because it would
scenario.
either be Chiefs, Bills, or Seahawks, Cowboys,
Right.
or Cowboys, Seahawks, however
I
they get.
do think I think the Seahawks game in Seattle scares me a little bit more than playing at home against Buffalo.
Here's the weird thing. We sit back and look at
You
the Eagles
always play
history,
bad in
and I just
Seattle.
said it with Rodgers against them. Right. We always play bad in Seattle. But the way we're talking and hyping this team, this is a different team. This is a
Yeah.
different dog, man. This is
Yeah.
not the same Eagles of the past. This isn't, the Doug Peterson and Carson Wentz Eagles that are going there. It's not Russell Wilson anymore. Like, I get it. We like Seattle's roster. Am I taking Jalen Hurts or am I taking Geno Smith in that matchup?
Right. Right.
So
And the
it's
lack
tough.
of pass rush, man. It is tough.
They laid the schedule out very odd, man. I would feel so much more comfortable with my 13-4 pick if the games were intertwined. If
Yeah.
it was New England, Minnesota, Tampa,
Kansas City.
Buffalo,
Yeah, or Buffalo, yeah.
Rams, Jet, like, you know what I mean? Instead, it's like you lighten the front end, which makes me want to think 5-0, but are they good? I don't know. But then at the same time, Scotty, are they going to go 8-1 again heading into a
Right.
bye?
It's tough to do, man. It's tough to
Yeah.
do. That's why I asked, like, in those first 5 games, like, it's really hard to start the season 5-0,
Right.
man. But I mean,
Right.
it's what we're expected
Because you
of
just
them at
look
the
back
same
and
time.
if it just feels like, man, like 7-2 or 6-2 is so much more reasonable at that point. You know what I mean? Like,
Because Cowboys, Chiefs, Bills, Niners, Cowboys, Seahawks. That's a gauntlet.
Giants as well. I mean, I know we
Yeah.
own the Giants. I'm not scared of the Giants. It's at home on Christmas Day. I get that. But like, the Giants are a good team, man.
So
They
you
were a
have it
playoff team this year.
dropping one to the Giants, like the one at the end of the season?
No.
No?
No.
Still have
Unless they already have it locked up and they sit everybody. Then
So
it's a
what
loss.
are your 4 official losses? Like, if you had to pick 4 official
My 4
losses.
official losses are 1 to Dallas, the Jets, Kansas City, and then either Buffalo or Seattle.
So what if we laid it out like this to where and now I'm like creating this scenario where it makes us feel more comfortable with our records, right? But I'm just thinking, like, the Cowboys and Eagles just always it's just a weird matchup
They
every
win
single
the
time.
road games.
They
Like,
win the
Dallas
road
will
games,
beat us
right?
here, and we'll go into Dallas and beat them.
And then maybe that doesn't feel as unrealistic if you're, going into Kansas City
Right.
at 7-2 rather than 8-1, right?
Now, unfortunately, it was the reverse last year, but we played Dallas with their backup at home,
and then
they played Gardner Minshew in Dallas on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
So we have not had even fair ground yet in these matchups.
Which game are you looking the most forward to? Like, well, let me caveat, other than the 49ers game, brother.
Other than San Fran, I'll be honest with you, man. I think
Are they at the top of
that's
your
the thing.
list?
With picking these games, it makes it so much more difficult, but it also makes viewing your Eagle season so much better. I don't get me wrong, I love when they start 8-0 and all that. But when you're beating up on the Commanders and the Cardinals and the Texans and whoever else, it just makes it less, I don't know,
You
less
have to wonder,
pleasurable,
man.
right?
You have to wonder where
Yeah.
we're really at. Like,
Right. So I would say San Fran's obviously on the list.
Yeah,
Kansas City, right? I mean, I believe that's Monday Night Football in Arrowhead. That's going
yeah,
to be incredible. A Super Bowl rematch. Um, the Jets, because you know how high I am. There's a lot, man. I'll be at the Dolphins Kelly Green game, so like I'm looking forward to that.
yeah,
Buffalo, you're high on, but there's that gauntlet of New York, Miami, Chiefs, Bills, Niners is what you have to look forward to. And
yeah,
not to mention, we love the Giants and Dallas weeks every year anyway. So
yeah.
this schedule is set up to be a lot of fun and a true effing test, man. Listen, here's
Because
my
well, I was gonna
go
say
ahead.
in that stretch there, you talk about the Cowboys at Eagles, obviously division rival, top three teams in the NFC, right? You talk about the Eagles and Cowboys, and then Eagles and Chiefs Super Bowl rematch. Bills and Eagles is my Super Bowl prediction for this year, and then 49ers Eagles NFC Championship
Right.
rematch, and most likely NFC Championship game this year, and then the Cowboys again. So like that is your playoffs in a nutshell. In reality, like these are the teams that you are going to see most likely throughout the postseason. We're going to see most likely every team that has a chance to win the Super Bowl, in my opinion, in this season, aside
Right.
from the AFC North, the
Right.
Ravens and the Bengals.
Yeah.
Those are the only two teams that we're not seeing this year that I think have a chance to win the Super Bowl.
No,
So I
I
do
completely
agree,
agree.
man. I think it just makes the season so much more interesting. And, while we're living through it and, pulling our hair out in
Right.
those
Living
weeks,
and dying by every win and loss and bad
it's like it
play.
won't, at the time, if you lose that game against Kansas City, it's not going to feel the greatest,
Right.
but you're going to at least know where you're at. And I think
Yeah.
that's the difference between last year. We were going into each of those playoff games. Well, after the Giants, we knew what the Giants were, but
Yeah.
49ers, Kansas City, we were going in there with question marks and we didn't know.
Right.
Like the offense, we know, man. Like we know the offense is going to do what it does because
Comes
they have
down
an
to the defense,
identity.
man.
Yeah, it comes
So
down to that
that's
defense.
that is a great segue. Let's do it, man. So
Yeah.
13 and 4 are both of our official record predictions. It seems incredibly lofty with this schedule that we were just walking through. I get it, but 12 and 5 is my basement. Like I
If
really
you're
do
going to be
believe
the
this
best,
team
you
gets
got to
to
be
12
the
wins.
best.
Yeah.
That's as
But you
simple as
mentioned
that.
it, man. The defense has been this team's Achilles heel, even in the biggest moments. Even when they won a Super Bowl over Tom Brady, the defense only got
Yeah.
off the field one time in the fourth quarter with a Brandon Graham strip sack,
That was
right?
the
Last
difference.
Super Bowl with the loss to Mahomes, the offense, Jalen, incredible. They don't punt. 2 years ago under Gannon's defense in the regular season, Kansas City comes to the link. They don't punt. They have not in 8 quarters of play. They have not gotten Patrick Mahomes off of the field, man. Outside of a missed field goal in the Super Bowl. So my question to you is, who is your X factor on defense for the Eagles to be to ascend that defense to more of a stable unit?
Man, that is a very tough question because when I look at this defense, your mind immediately goes to what?
Pass rush.
Excuse me. The pass rush,
I
right?
know.
The
I just had to
defensive
sneeze
line.
too.
Yeah, I'm having the burps, man. I'm sorry. I apologize
Celsius.
to everybody out there if that came through the mic, but nonetheless, you look at the pass rush when you immediately look at this team. But with that being said, it begs me to look in a different area for who's going to make that difference on the defense. And so you look at the corners. It's like Bradbury and Slay. I think they'll do their thing, but
Yeah.
I think N'Kobe Dean, man. I was leaning between him
We
him and
never.
Reed Blankenship.
When
Him
are
and
we going
Reed
to
Blankenship.
disagree, bro? When are we going to fight on this show and just be like, what are you talking about? We
Like
don't
if
discuss
N'Kobe
who we
Dean,
think is. Yeah, I
bro, if
agree.
N'Kobe Dean is like manning that middle linebacker unit, that spot, right, and leading this defense and calling out plays before they happen at the line of scrimmage and picking the right hole to blast whenever there's a run play. Like if he is making those type of plays, those game-changing plays, like we saw in the preseason, man. Who was it? The Browns were driving down the field.
Yeah.
He gets his head on the ball in the goal line stance, right? They force a fumble, boom, the ball's going the other way. If he can make those type of instinctual plays that we feel like he has inside of him, man, he can lead this defense to great things. And that can be the difference, right? TJ Edwards was good to great last year, but you can be better as a linebacker, especially in pass coverage. And that is the difference. I think Nakobe Dean is smart enough to be great in pass coverage, to know where the ball may be going, to see these holes in the defense and cover them up. And if he can do that, man, I think you start to, one, look at the weakness on this team, linebackers, safeties,
As
if that's
less
where
of a
you want to go,
weakness. Right.
less of a weakness. And we know what the rest of the defense is going to do. I did give some consideration to Reed Blankenship just
Yeah.
because we saw
It's
what
the
a
other hole.
game-changing
Yeah.
safety could do last year. CJ Gardner-Johnson, right? Those turnovers, they make or break games. So if he can create turnovers from that safety position, saw the forced fumble in the playoffs. We saw him get several interceptions. If he can do that type of stuff, I think he can be a game changer
Yeah.
as well. But Nakobe Dean is the guy that I'm looking to there, man. I'm
Yeah, man.
interested to see what you thought, though.
I don't know when we're going to disagree. It's my pick as well. Just for like you pointed out, when you look at the strengths of this unit, you go to cornerback and you go to the defensive front and there's edge rushers. And don't get me wrong, I'll hit on Hassan Reddick here in a second because I do, or Hassan Reddick and Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith. Those three guys on the front are huge difference makers to me because at this point of their careers, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, you're happy to have them. You're happy to have their veteran presence. And almost as long as they're not a negative out in the field, if BG, I know he's coming off a 10-sack season, but if BG can still get you 7 sacks, if Fletcher Cox is still a presence in the run game and everything up the getting double teamed, that's huge for the rest of the line, right? Hassan Reddick, if he's the leader, another 12 sack plus season last year was just ridiculous. But, double digits for him, that's huge, right? But when you get to the weaknesses where you're looking for someone to stand out because, oh boy, if that question mark can stand out, a la Jalen Hurts last year, right?
Yeah.
You knew what you had in wide receiver. You knew the offensive line. You knew we could run the ball. What was the question mark that could ascend this team to another level?
Yeah.
QB. Uh-oh. He learned how to put. Happy learned how to putt. Here goes Jalen Hurts, and it takes him to a Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
What do I look at with the Eagles' defense?
Yeah.
Middle linebacker and safety. And I go to Nakobe Dean over Reed Blankenship because of the expectations.
Yeah.
Nakobe Dean has had a very up and down roller coaster of a preseason, right? Of a training camp because it came in day one. He was getting first team reps. He was the Mike linebacker. Sean Desai's praising him in one of his first press conferences, talking about his IQ and everything out there. And then you're starting to hear that, Christian Ellis and Brandon Morrow are getting first team reps this day, and Dean's injured for a couple days. But then he's playing in the preseason when guys like Reed Blankenship already have their spot locked up. What's happening here with linebacker Nakobe Dean? The bottom line is he fell to us as a 3rd-round draft pick 2 short years ago. And before the injury concern was mocked to possibly go in the 1st round. There were analysts and experts talking about this being the steal of the draft. That's lofty expectations, my friend.
Yeah.
So if Nakobe Dean, maybe he's not the steal of the 2021 draft, but maybe he's a damn good starting linebacker in the NFL. And that's a huge difference maker because we have such a hole at that spot right now, such an unknown where if he takes those reins and runs with them and he's the eyes and ears out there. And like you said, that IQ, man, that's all we heard about coming out of Georgia was his IQ, right? He's a little undersized, but he's quick to the ball. He picks things up pre-snap. He tells guys where they need to be or blah, blah, blah. If that shows, the one game he played against the Titans, led the team in tackles. If he has a nose for the ball like that, if he can help stop the run, that is incredibly huge for this Eagles defense, man. And it takes them to another level of stability, basically.
Yeah, and I think you speak to the connection with the Georgia players as well, and so just think about on a run defense set, right, where you have Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, your 2 guys in the middle of your defensive line, and then you have Nakobe Dean as your middle linebacker. That trio right there, that's going to be your run defense. That's going to be what stops. That's your wall, right? You have your 2 big bodies up front to clog those holes, and then Nakobe Dean is going to be there to come in and plug in any open hole that may appear for the running back. And so I do think he's going to be a key cog when it comes to run defense specifically, man, because it's we saw last year what a struggle that was at times, and especially in the Super Bowl, man. The Kansas City Chiefs were able to run the ball against us, and it was miserable to watch at
Right.
times,
Even
right?
when you go out and bring in Linval Joseph and Nick Damakinsu, it didn't
Exactly.
make enough difference.
And let's be honest, it shouldn't be up to your defensive line completely to stop the run, right? You need guys behind them that can help and support that. So I think Nakobe Dean's going to be a big part of that. But you also look at his IQ and the pass covering ability. He is smaller in size, but he's quicker, so he is going to be able to stay with tight ends like Travis Kelce. Not saying he's going to guard Travis Kelce and strap him up.
I know.
He'll be able to stay with quicker guys. He'll be able to stay with slot receivers. And I think we could see we got crushed in the slot last year, right? Like that was the thing with CeeDee Lamb, Terry McLaurin. They came into Philly. They put Terry McLaurin in the slot. Now it's not Slay or Bradbury guarding that guy, right? So you need that support, that IQ in the middle of the field there. And I think, like we said, if he can pan out to anything close to what he was expected to be, that's going to help this defense significantly. TJ Edwards was an unknown. I know he's talked highly about now. He moved on, and it's going to be
TJ Edwards gets way too much praise.
I do. I believe that as well, man. He's a tackling machine, but the other things it completely lacked, right? Like when is he getting a
solid linebacker? Solid linebacker. He's being he got paid and talked about for sure. Where's he at? Chicago now?
I think he's in Chicago, yeah.
Like he is one of the bigger defensive free agents out there.
Yeah.
And it was unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man. It was the same thing when Alex Singleton left and went to Denver. And people were like, oh, we're going to miss Alex Singleton. Do you know why Alex Singleton was always leading the Eagles in tackles? Because he was always 2 steps behind his receiver. So he had to make a tackle because it was caught and being ran with constantly.
It is crazy because, you look at the Eagles letting TJ Edwards walk, letting Kaiser White walk, right? Yeah. It's because they want something better, right? Like they think that they can get something better or at least the same. And so to that point, I think Nakobe Dean could be that better piece, man. I think he could be your future leader of this defense. At some point, the veterans will move on, right? Like the veterans will retire. It will move on and become Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis's team. And to that point, you're going to need that guy, that stable leader in-house. And Nakobe Dean, the thing with Nakobe Dean is, he's got everything up here. He's got everything off the field. He's got the leadership, the intangibles. It's about the tangibles now, right? Yep. The tackles, being in the right place, making the tackle, not getting ran over. Like these are the things that we're going to be looking for this season. He's got everything else up here, and usually that's the hardest part. So I think he's going to be a key piece, man. But he will be the piece against those tough offenses that keeps this thing together, and hopefully he can fulfill that, man. If not, we'll have some trouble in the middle there for sure.
I agree, man. All right, listen, before we wrap this show up.
Yeah.
13-4. Nakobe Dean, huge X factor on defense. Not that this offense needs much more help. But who is your X factor offensively this year for the Eagles just to keep everything together, just to keep them at the same tier, the same level they were last year, or maybe take them to another stratosphere? Who the hell knows? But who's your guy for the Eagles on offense this year?
I mean, you know where we're going with this one, man. It's got to be DeAndre Swift, right? Like the guy was lining up yesterday in wide receiver drills. He's the only running back that's doing that at the Eagles camp. And you know what? I'm to the point, man, where go ahead, run him out there at slot receiver. I don't care. You just need to get him on the field and get the ball in his hands. And I think he's going to make a lot of guys' lives easier. I think Jalen Hurts specifically. He's going to make his life easier, and it adds a different facet of the offense. As you mentioned,
it adds something completely new.
To make the offense better. That's the way you make it better, is with a prolific receiving running back that you can run screens nonstop to, that you can do all different types of things. You can have 2 running backs on the field at one time now, right? You can have Rashad Penny in the backfield, DeAndre Swift in the slot. You can do a lot of different things. We also know Dallas Goedert, tight end, right? He's another guy that's on my mind. I think they need to get him involved a little bit more this season as well. Obviously, it's a task, right? You got all these weapons. I'm sure they want to get Quez Watkins the ball at certain points as well, right? It starts with AJ and Smitty. Those guys are going to get the majority of the targets. But when you see how everything's divvied out, I don't think that Goddard and Swift necessarily take away from Smitty and AJ.
No.
I think they take away from Jalen running the football. I think that's where the difference ought to be is taking that wear and tear off Jalen's legs. Nobody else needs to lose any of their production, I would say. I think Jalen just needs to throw the ball a little bit more. And that's just coming from me wanting to protect Jalen Hurts as our prize franchise quarterback. How can we sustain him? How can we keep him healthy long term? I think him passing the ball and running a little bit less. We know how dynamic the running game makes him, but just a little bit less. And I think DeAndre Swift can be that addition to where maybe you would take off for this 3rd and 7 and go get that first down yourself. Well, maybe Swift's just standing over there and you can dump it off to him really quick. And
he just brings another level of explosiveness from that position that this team just has not had since LaShawn.
He can take it to the house from anywhere.
That's no disrespect to Miles Sanders. He had a career year last year. He got paid great for him. DeAndre Swift is on another level in my opinion. As long as he stays on the field, like he's more talented in every aspect for my money. So I do agree with you. DeAndre Swift is that new piece that can take them to another level.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I do agree. Dallas Goedert was where my mind initially went because we've seen what life is like without him. We've seen how the offense can stall at times when you don't have that pass catching threat, that weapon at tight end. He's a great blocker. They do so much with him. And when he's on the field, it opens up everything else on the outsides for your 2 stud wide receivers. But I got to go with the best player on this offense, man. And I got to go with A.J. Brown. And it's very simple for me. If you were to ask me, who's the one who would you be most upset about if he went down injured on the Eagles offense outside of Jalen Hurts?
Yeah.
I would say a skill position. All right, again, right?
Yeah.
You could say Lane because we know what life's like without Lane.
I know what you mean.
I'm talking weapons. I would have to say A.J. Brown. We've seen, and don't get me wrong, it was Jalen's rookie year, it was Smitty's rookie year, it was 2 years ago for Goddard, but we've seen life with Goddard and Smitty and Quez.
Yeah.
What happened from the second A.J. Brown stepped into this building? Super Bowl contention.
Yeah.
So A.J. Brown, to me, whether he's got 9 catches for 140 yards and 2 touchdowns, or he's got 3 catches for 40 yards and he's just opening up everything else because he's so effective out on the field, is so important and key to me, dude. He is the star of this offense. He's got the relationship and chemistry with Jalen. That was in year 1. My thing with him is it could get better. It legitimately, A.J. Brown has the ability to go for over 1,500 receiving yards. He has the ability to score double-digit touchdowns.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think? And I know he scored a 70-yarder with Minshew against the Saints. Like, I know his production didn't take that big of a hit, but what do you think he does if Jalen doesn't miss a couple games last year?
Yeah. Probably 1,500 yards at least, right? Like, so
around
Cowboys against the Saints.
Some news for you here 2 minutes ago, and this is the guy. This is who we were talking about on Twitter yesterday. Dov Kleeman, right?
Yeah.
Update: Patriots running back Ramondre Stevenson is missing from the start of Friday's practice ahead of their Week 1 game versus the Eagles. Zeke Elliott would likely start if Stevenson can't go.
Interesting.
So not sure if it's injury, what's going on there, but
I would rather see Zeke, honestly.
That's pretty big.
Yeah, no doubt, because that was the big thing that everybody was worried about with the Patriots offense, right? Them running the football against the Eagles, and that takes a big hit. Zeke, I'm sure he's probably refreshed in a new scenery.
Yeah,
I'm
cool.
not throwing him to the wolves, but he's not a Ramondre Stevenson at this point in his career. Ramondre can do a little bit of everything. But no, I love your pick of A.J. Brown, man. That obviously he's the number 1 wide receiver. He's the guy that opens everything up for everyone. He's the guy that if you have to pick one of these guys to double team, he's the guy that you're double teaming. And so when you take that extra defender, it obviously opens up the rest of your offense. But I think it just speaks to how exciting this offense is going to be. I know I talked about DeAndre Swift, man. I obviously play Madden since I got the new PS5, man. And you run there's this play that I run that is like virtually unstoppable. It's Madden. I don't know if it's gonna translate in real life, but basically you just have you have a 2 tight end set, so your 2 tight ends are on the right side, right? You have both of them doing crosses over the middle. Then you have AJ Brown right here in the slot. He does a cross over
A
this way to
post,
the
yeah.
other side of the field. You have your outside receiver. You can have Smitty, Quez, whoever on the outside running a go route. And then you have Swift in your backfield, and he just goes on a wheel route out to the outside. And usually the linebacker, either he gets a linebacker that picks him up, or he goes out past the safety. The safety drops him because AJ's floating underneath, and DeAndre Swift is wide open every single time, man. And I'm not saying it's going to be
Is
that
it in the
simple.
playbook? Wait till it
It's,
comes out week 1.
it's in the playbook, right? So that's what we're looking at. It's not just that, oh, he's going to be wide open and the plays are going to be magical. It's not like that. But the thing is, he's going to be matched up with a linebacker, or teams are going to have to put, 5-6 DBs on the field in order to match up with him in the passing game. Then you run the football. So it's going to be a matchup nightmare. And then you throw guys like Rashad Penny into the mix, right? You just have options.
You do.
Unlimited options in this
I'll
offense.
tell you one thing I wish they would bring back that you don't see too often anymore. The Eagles used to do it all the time with B. West and Corral Buckholder or Deuce Staley and B. West when B. West was young, is put Jalen in the gun and put a running back to each side.
Yeah.
And let the defense figure out what the F you're about to do.
Yeah.
Whether that's whether that's an option to either side, a delayed whatever. Whether it's putting them both out in the passing game and 2 linebackers better come pick up Kenny Gainwell and DeAndre Swift. I think it's another wrinkle you can use. Now again, I understand that at that point you're probably taking a wide receiver off the field for that or whatever. But
look, Quez can come off the field for DeAndre Swift, in my opinion. So whatever. I mean, I've heard about Quez. He's had a great offseason, great training camp. He looks revamped. Everybody's saying that he's gonna, surprise everyone. And then when he hits free agency, he's gonna earn a bag that we're all gonna be surprised about.
Okay.
Whatever. I mean, that's fine. I'm not down on Quez completely, but DeAndre Swift, I've said this previously. If we wanted to start DeAndre Swift at slot, I would not be against that. It does not matter to me. You get guys like that on the field any way you can.
Right, you find ways to get your best playmakers out on the field. That's the bottom line. So I hear you from that standpoint. Before we wrap up, man, one more guy I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Has the keys to the city. He has the keys to everything. Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to sit here and imagine a world, hypothetically, where he takes another leap, right? Compared to what he did last year. But you talk about intangibles earlier on, with Nakobe Dean, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, you're talking about Mr. Intangible. You're talking about Mr. Work Ethic, Mr. Everything, right? So he's going to put the work in. His mentality, everything like that. He loses in a Super Bowl. He wants to get back. What are your expectations out of Jalen Hurts this year? More of the same from last year, a lot of the same from last year, but maybe a slightly better in this area? Or do you expect him to even look like a different type of passer this year again?
So what I'll say, it's hard to look like a better version of a passer when you're the best in statistics.
Right, when you're almost an MVP last year,
Exactly. And he was the best deep ball thrower, the best tight window throw. There was a bunch of different things that he was the best at last year when it comes to throwing the football. But I do think, once again, when you get into these games and you see the offense come out firing in the first half and then they just completely chill out in the second half, they just run the football down your throat. I think that changes a little bit this year just with the amount of competition, as we mentioned, right? In that schedule, you got several contenders that aren't going to die in the first half, right? It's not like last year where you can kill these teams in the first half with your passing game, go air them out, and then second half, we're going to run the clock out on you. So in those situations, I think we're going to be seeing more full games from Jalen Hurts having to pass the football, which means more yards, more passing touchdowns, everything included, right? So I think we're just going to see more of Jalen as a passer. I don't think it means that he's going to be a better passer. I think he's just going to be passing the ball a lot more at the same rate, but it's going to end up in more yards, more passing touchdowns. So to your point, I think he just continues to improve, right? Because it's not like doing more volume isn't getting better. Like having
Right.
more volume is getting better at the quarterback position. That's part of it. So I think if he keeps the same efficiency, but it goes up in just the metrics and the amount of times
Yeah.
that he is throwing the ball, I think that will make the difference. But I think it also puts a different type of confidence in this offense when the passing offense is just completely unstoppable.
Yeah.
I think there's still people out there that think that Jalen Hurts is this mobile quarterback and that
Pretty funny.
all he does is get out of the pocket and, he might make a throw
He was
occasionally
the
here
best
that looks
passer from
good.
the pocket last year,
He was the best passer from the
statistically.
pocket. He's the best deep ball passer in the league. He has two of the best wide receivers in the NFL. I think this year we're going to see Jalen Hurts officially the
Yeah.
passer, right?
I
Like
agree.
that's the transition we're looking for here. Maybe it's not 750 rushing yards with 13 rushing touchdowns. Maybe it's 500 rushing yards and 8 or 9 rushing touchdowns, right? Like that's the difference that I'm
Yeah.
looking for. And just those few less opportunities on the ground, few less opportunities for him to get hit, him to get drove into the ground like in Chicago, right? I'm looking at those things. Those are the ways that Jalen Hurts can improve in my eyes. Because last year, man, he was borderline perfect in moments. And when you look at like the game management part of it, he's got that down. Like that's done. Like
Well,
we don't need to worry
let
about that,
call it
right?
what it is. He was borderline perfect on the
In the
biggest
Super Bowl.
stage. On the
Yeah.
biggest stage.
One mistake. That was
That
it.
tells you everything you need to know about the
And he
dude,
got
right?
face masks. So.
So I agree with everything you said. And when we're discussing this, talking about how, maybe an uptick in passing numbers, that is not to try to change Jalen. That is not
Yeah,
to say
not like
that
that.
that is not to say that him and Nick need to change the way they run this offense, the way that Jalen makes decisions and everything like that. But
Yeah.
there is no question that he needs to take less hits, that his legs do need a little less wear and tear. Like
Yeah.
there were games last year, man, where he had 13 carries, 16 carries, 11 carries. Now,
Yeah.
maybe 2 or 3 of them are those quarterback sneaks, and that's not going to change. But, I need the carries to be around like 7 or 8 per game. Like there's no explanation for where he's running the ball 13 to 15 times a game
Yeah.
this year. So what I mean is, I think he gets an uptick in passing touchdowns, not to, again, change how he operates, not to prove people wrong, but he has no problem taking outside motivation and improving. So when he hears everyone talking about his passing touchdowns compared to his rushing touchdowns,
Right.
because evidently those don't count to some people, I guarantee you see a spike in passing touchdowns this
Yeah.
year. But also I'm looking for more balance. So within those less carries per game, the less rushing yards, maybe slightly less rushing touchdowns this year,
Yeah.
what I'm looking for, just as progression as he, becomes even a better passer,
Yeah.
is games where, don't get me wrong, he had games where he did both, and he had games where he barely ran and threw for 330 and 4 touchdowns against the Steelers and the Titans.
Yeah.
But he also had weeks like against the Packers where he ran for almost 200 and threw for like 170. I'm
Yeah.
talking balance. I'm talking a balance of an average about, maybe he averages 270, 280 passing and runs for 50 per game, something like that.
Yeah.
40 per game.
Yeah.
More balance in that area, not 175 passing yards with 130 rushing yards. Not that it means anything different, but
Yeah.
again, we're talking about taking hits. You're talking about putting your quarterback at more risk. I'm looking for a little bit less of that risk factor and an elevation, as that passer. And that is not to say it's not even really to
Yeah.
say he needs to elevate as a passer.
It's not to discredit him, man.
It's just
not
no.
to
It's
discredit
now it's about consistency and a little less risk taking in the run game. That's
Yeah.
what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And I think to your point, you talk about balance and consistent. I think that's from a play calling standpoint as well. It's like in the first half, you can run the football in the first half, right? Like we don't need to save the running game until the second half and just pound it in the second half. You can mix it up. I think too often last year, there were situations, and mind you, these are little complaints that we're making about the offense because the offense was
Right.
once again borderline perfect at times. But there were a few instances, that Indianapolis game, for example, right?
Oh yeah.
Where they came out
Chicago.
several times in the first half and you passed the ball all 3 downs, 3 and out, boom. 3 incompletions, boom. That drive.
Chicago when he got hurt.
Chicago. Yeah. Great. And let's also talk about the decision to run the quarterback as much as they did against Chicago at the beginning of that game, right? I get it. You want to use his legs. That is an advantage that you have. But I think the more he passes the ball, the more of an advantage the legs are.
Legs become, yep.
You run less, there's less eyes on you running, right?
Right.
So if you use it, look at the way Mahomes runs, right? He does not scramble. He does not run. And I know Mahomes is different. You strive to be him, but you never will. But you can at least try. And so when you look at Mahomes play, eyes are down the field. And Jalen does a great job of this as well. He keeps his eyes down the field. That's something he excelled at last year. But Mahomes will not run unless he absolutely has to. Right. Unless he absolutely has to. And even then, he does a great job of protecting himself. And that's maybe another facet that Hurts can do a little bit better. Get down a little bit earlier, right?
Yep. No, I agree, man. And don't get me wrong.
I think we're on the same page there. It's not to discredit his talents.
You can't change someone's DNA in the way they play. But as a coach in Sirianni, as a unit, you can try to steer them in a direction that protects your asset, right?
We don't want him to be
everywhere he's a businessman, right? He's an owner of this football team. You're trying to protect your asset, your franchise quarterback, right? Let's not run him 17 times against the Green Bay Packers and take 15 hits, right?
Exactly.
Because this offensive line is so good that, he's going to take some hits in the pocket. But when you have the best offensive line in football, those are minimum. Those are so few and scarce that he's not going to get hit in the pocket a ton. So by you rushing him a ton, it just puts his body to so much more contact. And it's, again, I don't want them to stop doing it, but I want them to do it less.
Yeah.
100%.
And it's not like the QB sneaks. We're not talking about goal line runs. Like that's where you use the advantage, right? Like options in the goal line, in the 5-yard line. Like that is where you use the advantage.
The touchdown against the Colts game, right? They're inside the 10, third down, snap. It's a direct draw because he sees the field. That's different.
Yeah.
I'm talking like box, you're on your own 30, first and 10, box is loaded, and you run a read option, and the QB keeps it and picks up 4 yards and takes a hit by 3 guys.
Yeah.
I don't need that in my life, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I get it. But like, no, I don't need to see Jalen Hurts out for 2-3 weeks this season. We can't afford it in reality. So I think there should be, it's not the main goal, but there should be a partial goal of keeping him as healthy as you can and protecting him. I agree, man. While not taking the intangibles away from the player, right? Not changing the player, just kind of honing it in a sense. So we are
just over 48 hours away from Eagles kickoff in Foxborough, baby. 13-4 are Scotty and I's official Eagles 2023 record predictions. We'll see how right we are. Don't forget, guys, here on the DSM-Media Philadelphia YouTube channel, we will be live every Sunday on game day for Eagles pre-game live. So come hang out, drop your predictions along with us, have a beer, whatever you want to do. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a long, fun season. And we'll be live every game of the year, man. So
yes, sir.
For that, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, whatever you got to do. Subscribe to the Turf Talk YouTube channel. We'll be breaking down all NFL content, multiple days throughout the week, live every Thursday and Sunday. So it'll be a lot of fun as well over there.
Comment the hashtag Eagles guys right here in these comments. Boom, you'll be entered in for that Kelly Green jersey.
Kelly Green jersey. But we need you guys to subscribe, comment, whatever you got to do, and we will be raffling off an Eagles Kelly Green jersey from the Pro Shop. So with that said, for myself, for Scotty, for DSM, have a great rest of your weekend and go Birds.